Welcome to the Cowboy Up podcast, where talk is all about the West. This episode is brought to you by the Dude Ranchers Association and Golden Wings Horseshoes and produced by Cowboy Spirit USA. Although Jolyn Young grew up around horses and ranching, she never expected to live on some of the most remote ranches in the American West, struggling with marriage and motherhood. How'd she get through it? Well, let's just say humor played a role. She's here now to talk with Russell and Alan about her cowboying, cattle driving, and writing life.
Morning, Alan. We're at that time of year, holidays.
Best time of the year. I love Thanksgiving and like being right here on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, how was it? Was it a good Thanksgiving for you? You have a good one?
I've postponed it, so
okay.
It's still yet to
occur. Like us. That's what we do with Christmas. I think we had Christmas about second week of January last year because, we say here at the ranch we make holidays, we don't take them. So we make sure, and we had a great, Thanksgiving here at the ranch, lots of repeat guests, people who are our great friends, and we look forward every year to seeing them. So it was really, really nice. And, of course, holidays at your ranch must have been special.
Yeah, all of our close friends from all of parts of the world would show up at the ranch, and so we'd celebrate, and it almost always involved killing a few quail, which we would then cook while they were still there. But everybody enjoyed the ranch on Thanksgiving. The weather's always great, Thanksgiving.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, that's really what you're describing is how dude ranching got started. Friends and family coming to visit the working ranch, and all of a sudden they wouldn't leave, and they started to pay, and dude ranching was born.
We never got to the pay part. Darn it.
Should have met me sooner.
Yes.
We could have helped you out. Well, we have today someone. Of course, you were remote. What were you? 8 miles down the ranch road.
8 miles of dirt road, 20 miles of blacktop to get to town.
Right, and town was which?
Duncan. Well, Duncan or Lordsburg, but Duncan was the closest.
Right. And Duncan was smaller than Lordsburg. You had to go to Lordsburg for other stuff, right?
Well, when you counted me and my wife, we had 400 people in Duncan, so big town.
Somebody was just saying yesterday he was from Duncan, and somebody looked at me and said, "No one's from Duncan." I said, well,
I want to meet that person because he's right.
It was Bill Baffert who told me that. But anyway, well, Jolyn Young is with us today, and she knows what remote living's all about. She grew up in Northern California, and I think people forget California is not just beaches and Disneyland. It's one of the places ranching got started. She started on her grandparents' cattle ranch and then in a rural subdivision, but throughout, she never outgrew her love of horses. She worked for horse trainers before getting a job as a cowgirl on a Nevada ranch at age 23. And Nevada, they do it for real out there. It was there that she met her husband, Jim, and the real adventure began. They started moving around to different ranches following Jim's job as a cowboy. They have now 3 kids. They live in southern Arizona, and they run, as it's described, a feral livestock gathering business. And as I always say in our rodeos, there's 3 places in general you rope. And when you're roping wild cattle, you're the real thing, period.
Yeah,
or you're going to fail fast.
Yeah,
kidding.
That's a lot of ways to stub your toe on in that world.
Man, you better be up for it. Well, anyway, Jolyn's debut memoir, Never Burn Your Moving Boxes. I just love the title. It was just published by Trafalgar Square Books. She also writes a humor column for Western Horseman, which is, of course, just such a respected longtime magazine. It's called Real Life Ranch Wife. And recently she started performing, including here, stand-up comedy based on her writing. She also does some photography. Great to have you with us, Jolyn.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to a real cow person and somebody that's got dirt on their boots.
Yes,
that's not
literally all the time. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's start at the beginning, and that's California. Tell us about your grandfather's ranch and how that led to where you are now.
Yes, so the ranch was about 40 miles south of Oregon, so right at the very, very top. And the ranch was my grandpa's dream that he sold his bean farm in Southern California in 1959 and bought the ranch. And then he raised his 4 kids, including my dad, up there. And then my sister and I grew up on the ranch, just a mile down the road. And we lived there till I was 9. And then we left and lived in a rural subdivision, which, 2.5 acres felt like downtown LA to us. But really, that's still pretty country to most people, I guess.
Yeah. It's all a perspective.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
you just always thought of yourself as a country girl?
Yeah. Yep. We've always had horses and junior rodeoed. And my dad was a horseshoer, and my mom was a equine therapist. So yeah, we've definitely always been horse and cowboy and country people.
Well, that's a great background. Tell us one of an adventure that you want to recall.
Oh, well, so there's an adventure from growing up at my grandpa's place that related to my own experience as a mom is, we were remote by California standards, the last ranch on the road before the road became impassable and no one ever went, past us. So anyhow, we were at my grandpa's up in the home field, which was the name of one of our hay fields, and my sister and I were playing and running around, and my dad, he's out on the tractor doing something, and he shuts off the engine and hollers at us to get back to the yard because there's been a mountain lion sighting right where we were playing earlier.
Did you see the mountain lion or just he?
I didn't see that one. No, he had seen it because, we were like, I don't know, 7 and 9 or, thereabouts. So, of course, my dad, he went a lot further around on the ranch, but he knew there was a cat up there. So he told us to, go play somewhere else.
The weird thing, I moved to Tucson when I was 6 to the ranch, and everybody, I'm not just talking my parents, everybody would say, oh, don't worry, mountain lions, they don't attack anybody, and they're not dangerous. And, there's worry more about a javelina or something. And, that's just so inaccurate.
Yeah.
I mean, it just really isn't true. So 23 years old, you got a job, and we're getting, just by the way, Jolyn, we're getting a bit of wind and movement. So maybe if you're moving, kind of hang in. But most of the time sounds pretty good.
Okay.
So 23, you hit the ranch in Nevada. Tell us a bit about that.
So that, ever since I was about 12, I just wanted to work as a full-time cowboy. And that just really stuck with me. I went to college, got a degree, and then I just wanted to have that and hang on my wall and go do what I actually wanted to do, which was cowboy. So I worked for a horse trainer for a little bit and didn't really like that. So when I was 23, I got a job with the Van Norman ranches north of Elko. And I loved it. They're a great family, still good friends with them. They're a lot of cattle, but a family type ranch. So that was a good fit for a girl from out of state who didn't know anybody.
How did you go about getting that job? What did you represent that you would do for them? That's interesting.
Oh, so I called them, and at first they have a horse program. So at first Ty Van Norman had a bunch of colts he needed started, and I had been starting colts and riding horses for the public. So I went there to do that, but then right before I showed up, the cowboys that he had hired to help gather all the cattle for the fall, they told him they weren't going to make it. So I got switched over to the steer gathering crew, and then the next spring, Ty and I ended up starting all those colts.
Well, so you stayed right on that ranch and did all parts of it. Is that what I'm hearing?
When I showed up, they were seasonal, So they had pasture cattle, meaning they were stocked with cattle from about April or May to October. So in the winter, for those 2 winters, I would go substitute teach in Elko. And then in the spring, I'd go hire back on with them.
Well, that was not an easy way to live.
No, it wasn't. But, when you're young and single, I mean, what do you need, right? A little bit of money in a suitcase.
So, I mean, this wasn't all that long ago, really. And,
No.
If it would have been 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, it would have been a challenge as a woman. Did you feel any challenge in that regard? Were you accepted, or did it create some issues?
Kind of both. As far as being accepted, once I was there, the other cowboys were really helpful and polite, and I never had any issues with being a woman that way. Some of the ranches, they just don't hire women. I mean, they just make that known either overtly or everyone just knows. And I think that has changed just between then and now. But that was the only, I was limited. As a 23-year-old man, you could literally go to any ranch and live in the bunkhouse. But as a 23-year-old woman, I guess if you wanted to live in a bunkhouse, but even then, sometimes they just wouldn't hire you. But no, I didn't have any issues as far as, everyone was super helpful to me. And if something was too heavy for me to carry, they were like rushed to help. So so there was no rudeness that way.
Well, when I grew up, we kind of I don't know that we ever talked about it, but we just didn't hire women. But one time a woman came along and just kind of said, "I'm here," and you don't have to hire me, but I'm here. And she quickly proved her worth, and don't hire women just went out the window. It just wasn't there anymore. So.
Exactly. Well, that's so neat to hear, because I think that's the way it should be. If you can do the job and you're polite and show up on time, that's about what you need in an employee, I think.
Somebody said years ago, and I'm a believer, just show up on time and do your job and it's done.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
That seems so simple, but doing simple things is not always how. Well, you were there at the Nevada ranch a couple of years. What was the biggest challenge? What were best story?
The best story.
I mean, you're a young cowgirl at the real cattle ranch, and it's a big one you've described.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on when you were working there. Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite stories, I guess, is just when I had to get my courage up. I guess a couple times I had to. So we started those colts, and there were 3 by the time we got to them. And there's one that was looked like she was about to buck, what we would call waspy, like just really hot. And, Ty goes, "Well, I guess we're going to have to hire a bronc rider to get on her." And I told myself, you are here doing a man's job. You either do it or you quit. So it took every bit of my courage, but I told him, no, I'll get on her. And Ty, he's a hand and a half. So he was on a broke horse. We'd done all the groundwork with this filly. So he had her with the halter on, and then I'd be snubbed his saddle horn. So that means he would take the lead rope and dally it around his saddle horn. So basically he was in control. I've done that before. It's the safest way to do it. So I said, okay, sure. And I'll get on her. So I took off my chaps because they had fringe on them and, kind of moved around. And he said, no, leave your chaps on. We'll just get her used to everything all at once. And I said, I can get on her, but I cannot make myself do it with my chaps on. So I got on her, and I mean, like I said, Ty just took care of me and told me what to do, and we're cracking jokes and giggling, and that always helps makes you get loose and you ride better, then your horse rides better. And then after that, she was fine. But yeah, that was definitely a time I thought, this might hurt, but I have to do it.
Well, that's a fun time. And when you look back on it, when it worked fine, and then you look back, you can think, hey, that was a good time. That worked for me. So those are.
Exactly.
Well, and I think snubbing them up or ponying them, however you want to, that's the way I was always trained to start a colt, and it sure does just it does give you a whole lot better shot at those first few rides, I think. And
exactly.
I have a quick one, which is on the same subject, but we should be talking to you, not me. But I went to start a colt one time, and he couldn't buck very hard, but I couldn't ride very well, so he'd buck and I'd go off. And so if you get bucked off, the Cowboys' old saying is get back on. So I got back on. Mm-hmm. Well, 6 straight times he bucked me off. And 6 straight times I got back on. But on the 6th time, the guy that was helping me, or laughing at me, whichever, he said, I think that's enough, Al. And so he told me later, when I got bucked off that 6th time, I landed on my face on a pile of manure. And when I got up, I had a big piece of manure on my front tooth, and he thought I'd knocked my front tooth out because when I smiled, there was a big gap there.
Oh, man.
And he thought, well, that's enough bucking. Well, I thought that was enough bucking too, so that ended the day.
Oh, gross. But that tasted great too.
Well, I don't remember the taste, but I know I was glad when he said that's enough.
Yeah.
Well, my wife was in the branding pen at Tombstone last week. I wasn't there. And her horse, they got the rope under him, and he went to bucking, and she had a calf at the end of the rope. And so she has about a 6-inch square bruise on her thigh now, but she said everybody was pretty impressed I didn't get bucked off. And she goes, well, I had a rope across my leg holding me down. She said, but then I got the bruise. So anyway, you've lived out, and, don't burn your moving boxes, but you've lived out from town, and I assume that's the life you prefer. But what's the hardest part, especially now? I mean, I don't know how far out you are. You're in the Vail area, but you have 3 small kids. What's it like?
Well, now, so we live just north of Rio Rico, and now we're
that's remote. Right, Rio Rico. I'm sorry. That's right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yes, so right now at this moment we're not remote. My husband, he's camped out right now in New Mexico, catching wild cows, so he's still out there pretty remote most of the time. But when we did live, we usually lived 2 hours roughly from town. And the hardest part was the isolation and not having other people to talk to.
What about with your kids? Or if you're 2 hours from town, how do you get them to school? How's that working?
We didn't, let's see, they were too little to go to school then, but that's one of the reasons we started thinking, gosh, maybe we should be closer to town. So I say closer to town with air quotes because my daughter, my oldest child, when she needed to go to kindergarten, she got on a bus and rode the school bus 42 miles one way to the nearest one-room schoolhouse. Yeah, she had a 10-hour day. They have 4-day-a-week school, so they're longer days, and then with an hour bus ride each way. My 5-year-old had a 10-hour day.
Wow. It depends on which end of the bus route I was on. When I was a kid here in Marana, it's the largest school district in the United States. It's 550 square miles. And and now it's fairly urban. But I had a 45-minute ride if I was on the wrong end of the route. And so my days weren't real short. But we've gone over time, so we're going to take a quick break and come back.
We have a great team here at the Cowboy Up podcast, our co-hosts, our producers. But this podcast also happens because of our sponsors. During this season of Thanksgiving, we'd like to say just how thankful we are to have them. The Dude Ranchers Association supports over 90 ranches across the West. Dude ranching is one of the best vacations you and your family can take right now. It gives you a chance to be outdoors, participate in activities like horseback riding, ranch rodeos, hiking, birding, archery, shooting, and some ranches have you covered for winter activities. Yep, cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, snowshoeing, sledding, snowmobiling, and of course, horseback riding too. To learn more about what's available, visit duderanch.org. That's duderanch.org. The Dude Ranchers Association is ready to help you find the perfect ranch for your next vacation. Adventure awaits. Come find your inner cowboy today.
Well, I am interested in your book, Jolyn, and what caused you to write? How hard was it to write? What would have been the what's happened since then?
Yeah, so I decided to write the book because I could not get a job as a writer, so I had some time to fill. It was in 2019, and I just had our third baby, and we started our wild cow catching company. So we knew Jim, my husband, would be gone a lot, and I tried to get a job and was unsuccessful. So I thought, well, I'll learn to write a book because I kind of wanted to, but it's a big undertaking, and I'd never written a book or even taken a class on how to write a book. So I just started writing, and then I would look at Writer's Digest, their online resources, and do their exercises, edit my work based on their recommendations, some things like that. And it was really, really hard because I had trained myself and studied to write humor columns, 450 to 500 words, set up, punchline, get in, get out, funny, you're gone, bye. So to look at 80 to 90,000 words, holy moly.
Well, that's what you can't do is look at the whole, because the whole is too big. You can't get your arms around it. So
exactly, yeah.
So how did you just kept pushing and push through?
Yeah, I just kept going. I'm a fairly determined person, and once it kind of took hold in my mind that I was going to write a book, then I just decided I don't care if it takes me 3 years, I'm going to write this dang book. And yeah, when the kids were asleep, I couldn't really write during nap time because usually I was so tired I would have to partake. But I would write at night. I volunteered to go to the DMV so I could sit in line with my notebook and write my book. I just took little pockets of time. And then a documentary that I was in called Cowboy, a documentary portrait, that was shown at a writing conference, and one of the directors talked to a publisher about my book, kind of connected us, and then they bought my half-finished manuscript, and therefore I had motivation to finish it, and that's kind of been my publishing journey.
Are you still then working on writing, or was that a one and done?
Oh no, I'm always writing things, usually stuff that was due last week, but I wish I was joking.
Well, I've been trying to put together a book on the crazy stories that dude ranching has offered me in the 58 years I've been here. I've only been working on that 25 years, so
yeah.
I'm don't hold your breath on that one. Let's talk about wild cow catching, or
Yeah, count me in on that. I want to hear a wild cow story.
Oh boy. Well, the ones that people like to hear, the ones I don't like to hear from my husband, are the ones that end with, and then the cow went down and my horse tripped and I ended up on the bottom of the pile.
Well, those are the ones everybody likes to hear.
Yeah.
Oh,
except
man.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not the wild cow catcher. My husband is. That's one of his big passion things he loves to do. And I've gone to camp to cook for him before, but sorry, it's kind of windy. I'm trying to move. With the 3 kids and the rough country and the dangerous nature of the job, we haven't all gone out as a family. He took our older 2 kids before to go spook cattle for him, which is when he's got a bull or a cow roped, and then he'll lead them out. So they basically get halter broke out in the wilderness. And then it's helpful to have a child or someone else kind of chase them up from behind, and then that helps them move forward and go with you. So,
people can understand, that means that they've got a cow or bull or something on the end of a rope, and and he's trying to take them somewhere at the end of the rope, and one of the kids will come up and just kind of spook the animal from behind to get him off the tension of the rope. Is that?
Exactly. Yep, you nailed it. You're hired. Come on.
Well, a quick story on that. I had a big old ranch leased one time down by the Mexican border, and the biggest part of the ranch was a square that was really brushy. It had a lot of tall mesquites in it, and you couldn't see very far, and you couldn't find the cattle, and it was about 2 miles on each side, about a square of about 2 miles. And we had we had 500 cattle down there, and we'd gathered them all but about 40 head, but those 40 head had gotten wild and they wanted to run off and hide, and they could sure do it in that mesquite patch.
Oh, yeah.
And so the only way that I ended up getting them out of there is there was a road on each side of that big square of bad, brushy country. I'd fly my airplane down there, and I'd fly around and spot the cattle out in the middle. You couldn't find them if you didn't know where they were. Spot the cattle from the airplane, land, get on my horse, and go get them, and then lead them out of there one at a time on the end of a rope. And decided at that point that that's too tough cowboying. I mean, I did it, but the returns are minuscule for the work put in.
Exactly, yeah, for that kind of a deal. But yeah, those planes can be very handy for sure.
So,
well, we have a little cow outfit that surrounds our dude ranch outside Tombstone. When we bought it, the prior owner had Angus cows, and we were going to put our Criollo, which are essentially Corrientes, on it. And so, he was taking these cows off, and he had 45 days to do it. And at 45 days, there were still 9 cows, and he claimed a bull. There was, as it worked out, not a bull. But so he hired some guys, and they only got 7 of them. So we had 3 of them for about 2 years.
You'd see them once in a while?
We finally got them. Yeah, a year ago. We finally got the third and final one off of there. But they were pretty wild, but we needed your husband for that. Where'd you meet your husband?
Yeah, that sounds like it. Those last 3 can be harder than the first 30.
Yeah, of course.
For sure.
It's a deteriorating situation.
Yes. Hold on one second, please. Hey, Levi, you gotta be quiet, okay? All right, I think we can try edit that out. Yeah. So I met Jim. He was working as a cowboy. He's always worked as a cowboy, and he was at the neighboring ranch there in northern Nevada when I worked for Van Norman's. And we had some mutual friends who were encouraging him to call me and ask me to dinner. And he said, I've never met her. That might keep her out, which he was right. So a friend introduced us, and then we started dating after we met.
And so that was fortuitous that all happened, yes?
Yes, usually. No, just kidding. Yes, it is.
So what got you do a humor column for Western Horseman, and I've read 1 or 2 of them. What is it? Just was humor always part of your life, or did you find it when you were, you were talking about living remotely in the isolation? I read once that the invention of the radio reduced female suicides in the Midwest farming community by half.
I bet that's true.
Yeah, I believe it 100%.
And so, the isolation. What inspired were you always funny, or did you always see life that way?
Yeah. Let's see. My dad is really funny, and he cultivated that. He writes funny cowboy poems, and he performed them in my hometown, at the local poetry shows. And he had one poem about the 4-wheeler and the truck roll broke down. The horse was lame, so he got a pair of roller skates on a frozen morning to go gather a cow. He needed a doctor. And so when he performs that poem live, he is on roller skates. Well, when he was younger, he would be on roller skates, and he would jump rope on stage.
That must be a show.
Yeah, Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, you look at the front row and kind of, caution them a little bit. But so, I grew up like that, with that kind of influence. And, when I was younger, like a kid, I would say things and people would laugh. I wouldn't quite understand, but I knew it was fun. And then when I started cowboying, I started a blog just to kind of keep in touch with friends. And it's just fun. I've always just loved jokes and funny things. Pat McManus is one of my favorite writers. And so then, let's see, in 2017, when we moved to the most remote place we've ever lived, 4.5 hours from town, I decided I would change my blog into a humor column. My goal was to get a humor column in Western Horseman. So I started the word count, publish every Thursday, have a system, and make it about jokes, less about, anything else except that. And then I went to the Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop and met all these other funny people who were pursuing comedy as a business and sometimes a hobby. But that was a really, really motivating for me for sure. And then, yeah, just living so remotely. I mean, I would, you'd hear a truck engine maybe twice a week. And so I'd always run out and, oh, is that an airplane or is it a truck from headquarters coming with a person, It was usually an airplane, and then I felt sad. But finding the humor of living out there, gosh, if I didn't, I'd have lost my mind,
Well, how hard is it to take an event that happens and then put a humorous spin on it and make a story of it? Is that hard work, or does that just come naturally for you?
It's hard if everything goes well. Like it's 75 degrees with a slight breeze and nobody gets a flat tire. I can't work with that. But that one time, the ranch sent me like 3 hours away to the vets, and I took a horse and a dog, and I picked up a washing machine, and I was 7 months pregnant. And on the way back, I get a flat tire on the trailer on a hill. There's no spare. I was like, okay, guys. So I had to drive, 25 miles an hour for a couple hours till someone from the ranch could come meet me with a spare. But, I've learned anymore when other people see as like a wreck, I'm over here like trying not to snicker.
You invented wrecks, sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if bad things happen, you can't always help it, but you do have a choice how you want to react to it.
Yeah.
So
are you going to laugh at it, or are you going to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. For example, I'll roast Russell a little tiny bit. At my comedy show, I was billed as Captivating Critters, a lecture on desert wildlife.
Yeah, we had a little mess up in the office. They better know better next time.
Well, as soon as that happened, I was laughing. I'm like, this is so perfect, because you can't write this stuff. You can't make it up. And yeah. So anyway, so things like that, they just add to the story,
Well, I think it's a long tradition of, the cowboys I grew up around and the ranchers. Quite a few of them were pretty funny. Because I mean, if you're working with livestock, you're working with the wrecks. I mean, it just, it can be going really well right up until it doesn't. And
nobody wants to hear about a wreck that doesn't have humor. If you can add humor to it, it makes a story. If it's just a wreck, then you say, oh, that's too bad, and you go on.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Or if, a prank, I'm sure the cowboys you guys grew up around and have been around like to prank each other. I'd have someone ride up beside me when I was cowboying and, undo my flank cinch on my horse, or, just undo something on your saddle and ride off, and, just little things like that kind of makes the workday go a little bit faster when you're having fun and laughing.
Yeah. I listen to the old dude ranchers, and a lot of them are fading away, but man, their pranks were bordering on evil. I mean, and I'm not young, and I sit there and go, thank God I dodged that generation. 'Cause, man, I mean, they were rugged.
They're out for blood, huh?
Yeah, pranks that we did or had done to us were tame, really, really tame.
In the early days, if there wasn't somebody hurt through the prank, then it wasn't worth telling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, back before everybody sued each other over a scraped knee, huh?
Yeah, it's so. talk about your husband's mostly the guy catching the wild cows, and is that just kind of word of mouth? Everybody knows that he's a guy, and is he just getting paid per head, or how's that work?
How do you make a living on that?
Yeah, our listeners would love to know that.
Oh, yeah. Each contract is different as far as paid by the head or paid by the day. But we mostly work with government agencies. There's a lot of sticky areas to get into in the private sector with maverick cattle, which means unbranded, unclaimed cattle. Sometimes they don't belong to anyone, and then you catch them, and, oh, look, there's my cow I lost. Thanks for getting it. So we pretty much stick to government, honestly, with a 19-page contract,
Wow.
And you get paid by the head or for the time, or how does that work?
Usually by the head, but like I said, I mean, it's flexible. Some contracts are by the day, and that works too. But we work a lot like in wilderness areas where cattle are no longer allowed, and there are still some remnant cattle, because maybe the fences on the neighboring ranch aren't good because it's super remote, or they rely on natural barriers and cattle can get through. So yeah, we're just, cleaning up the public lands basically for the better enjoyment of the public.
And working for like the Forest Service or Bureau of Land Management?
Yep, both of those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's interesting. And is that work increasing, or are there a lot of feral cattle out there right now that need gathering?
Yes, we're right in the middle of a couple of multi-year contracts. So it seems like in the Southwest, in New Mexico and Arizona, that's where most of the wild cattle are because of the terrain, and the country is so rough and conducive, So yeah, that's the main area, and so far the contracts have been pretty steady.
Wow. Well, so back to the book, and that's available everywhere, I assume. Never Burn Your Moving Boxes?
Yep, it's distributed through Ingram, so yeah, all major retailers. Direct from my publisher, of course, is the one I want to give a special shout out to, and that's horseandriderbooks.com.
Okay.
It's available in most bookstores or online, or how would a person get one of your books?
Online, not brick and mortar so much, but Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Nobles. It's all available online through all of those.
All right, and we'll see you back here at the ranch, and you'll have some books, and we'll get you properly identified, and so Never Burn Your Moving Boxes. And what's the name of your column with Western Horseman?
Real Life Ranch Wife.
Oh, that's it. Real Life Ranch.
That's a great title.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah, and great magazine, and I really enjoyed the columns that I read. So thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you here at White Stallion.
Yes, thank you, Russell, and thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Jolyn.
At Thanksgiving, we want to give thanks to all our sponsors. Golden Wings Horseshoes, we thank them so much. And Fred, the guy who stuck it out for 10 years to invent this groundbreaking horseshoe. And more than us thanking Fred, our horses thank Fred, because these shoes, these plastic revolutionary type of horseshoes, get our horses back out on the trail, doing what horses are supposed to do at the Dude Ranch, take people into our beautiful desert, and it makes them feel better when they're riding, when they're not riding. They're always on their feet, and Golden Wings makes them feel better all the time. And we thank Fred and the whole team there at Golden Wings for that. Get to goldenwingshorseshoes.com, goldenwingshorseshoes.com. cowboyup.com.
Well, all my life I've had cow in my blood. You know, I was just raised around cattle, but some of the fun stories that you live with, you take with you all your life, and I enjoyed and think anybody would enjoy having life with enough adventures that then you can select some of those that kind of defines who you are.
Well, and pretty good. At Jolyn's relatively young age, she's already got a book that
about that.
Yeah, her experiences can fill I think she said 80,000 word book. So good for her.
One of those books is in my future. I want to get one of her books.
Yep.
And that's a wrap from Arizona, where ranches are abundant and sometimes downright remote. A cowboy thanks to Stan Houston's production team, and a special Thanksgiving thank you to our sponsors, the Dude Ranchers Association and Golden Wings Horseshoes. We appreciate you both. Tune in next week when the Cowboys chat with Michael Farmer, a retired PhD physicist turned Western historian and storyteller. Until then, this is Lynn Weezy Sneed, reminding you to sit tall and ride safe.
Storm rolled in from the western sky. 2,000 head of steers took flight. Good night paid those boys to ride, and by damn they would, though some might die. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and growing strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. She's 10 years old on a stout bay horse. 300 years they guide her course, from the Spanish quest to the blue and gray, to what we call the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye, don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. To the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years ago it's strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Rawhide and steel, hooves and horns, legacy to the yet unborn. A code that comes from a hard-lived life. Your destiny when you're born to ride. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and growing strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye, don't say goodbye to the cowboy